Los Angeles. A children's hospital receives an anonymous donation of $1.5 million. No press release. No photo op. No publicity at all. The hospital staff had no idea who sent it. They just knew that suddenly they could afford equipment that would save dozens of lives. 3 months later, another anonymous donation, this time to an AIDS research facility, another $1 million. Then another, and another, and another. For over 2 decades, someone was quietly funding hospitals, orphanages, and children's charities across the world. Millions of dollars, hundreds of organizations, zero public acknowledgement that someone was Michael Jackson. And here's what will shock you. The public donations, the ones you heard about, were just a fraction of what Michael actually gave. By the end of this video, you're gonna learn about a side of Michael Jackson that the media never showed you, and it's gonna change how you see him forever. To understand Michael's secret philanthropy, you need to understand where it came from. Michael Jackson grew up poor, really poor. The Jackson family lived in a tiny 2-bedroom house in Gary, Indiana. 9 kids, 2 parents, barely enough food on the table. Michael saw poverty up close. He saw what it meant to struggle, to go without, to wonder if things would ever get better. But he also saw something else. His mother, Catherine, giving to others even when the family had almost nothing. Catherine Jackson was deeply religious, a Jehovah's Witness. She believed in charity and helping those who had less. Even when the Jacksons were struggling, Catherine would make extra food and give it to neighbors who were hungry. She'd donate clothes the kids had outgrown. She'd volunteer at church. Michael watched this, absorbed it, made it part of who he was. Years later, when Michael became the biggest star on the planet, when he had more money than he could ever spend, he remembered those lessons. But Michael did something different than most celebrities. He didn't just write checks for tax deductions. He didn't just show up at charity events for photo opportunities. He gave privately, quietly, anonymously, because Michael didn't want credit. He didn't want applause. He just wanted to help. And that's what makes his story so incredible. For every charity appearance you saw Michael make, and there were dozens you never heard about. For every publicized donation, there were 10 anonymous ones. Michael Jackson gave away an estimated $500 million to charity during his lifetime. Let me repeat that, $500 million. More than any other entertainer in history. And most of it, the world never knew about, until now. Here's how Michael's secret philanthropy worked. He had a team of lawyers and financial advisors who handled his charitable giving. Their job was to identify organizations that needed help and donate money without revealing where it came from. Sometimes they'd use shell companies. Sometimes they'd donate through foundations with non-specific names. Sometimes they'd just send cashier's checks with no return address. The goal was always the same: get money to people who needed it without anyone knowing it came from Michael Jackson. Why? Because Michael learned early in his career that when celebrities donate to charity publicly, it becomes about the celebrity, not the cause. The media would show up, cameras would flash, headlines would read, "Michael Jackson donates to charity," instead of "charity receives funding for critical programs." Michael hated that. He believed charity should be about helping people, not building your own image. So he gave in secret. In 1984, Michael donated his entire payment for a Pepsi commercial, $5 million, to the Brotman Medical Center's burn unit. This one was public because Pepsi wanted the publicity. But even then, Michael didn't make a big deal about it. But here's what most people don't know. That same year, Michael quietly funded 3 other burn centers around the country. Different hospitals, different cities, zero publicity. Total amount? Another $3 million. Nobody knew about it. The hospitals knew they'd received anonymous donations, but they had no idea it was Michael. In 1985, Michael co-wrote "We Are the World" with Lionel Richie to raise money for African famine relief. The song raised over $63 million. Massive public success. Everyone knew about it. What they didn't know? Michael also personally funded food shipments to Ethiopia, paid for medical supplies, sponsored orphanages. He spent millions of his own money on top of what We Are the World raised. No press releases, no publicity, just Michael Jackson quietly trying to save lives. A doctor who worked in Ethiopia during the famine later said they received supplies marked as anonymous donor. Years later, after Michael's death, they discovered the shipments had been funded by him. Michael had been saving children's lives, and those children never even knew his name. That's not charity for publicity. That's charity from the heart. And this pattern continued for his entire life. Michael Jackson had a special connection to children's hospitals, maybe because he'd spent so much of his own childhood working instead of playing. Maybe because he saw children as innocent and deserving of protection. Whatever the reason, children's hospitals became the primary focus of his anonymous giving. Between 1985 and 2009, Michael funded medical equipment, research programs, and treatment for individual children at dozens of hospitals worldwide. He paid for chemotherapy treatments for kids whose families couldn't afford it. He funded surgeries for children with heart defects. He donated ventilators, MRI machines, and other expensive equipment that hospitals desperately needed but couldn't budget for. And he did it all anonymously. A nurse at a children's hospital in Los Angeles told a story after Michael's death. She said that for years, they'd been receiving anonymous donations that allowed them to treat children for free. After Michael died, the donations stopped. That's when they realized who'd been funding them. For over 15 years, Michael Jackson had been quietly paying for children to receive life-saving treatment. Nobody knew. Not the media, not the public, not even the families of the children he'd saved. Michael just did it because it was the right thing to do. But it wasn't just money. Michael also visited children's hospitals. Not for publicity, not with cameras, just quietly, privately. He'd call ahead or have his staff call and ask if he could visit sick children. No media, no press, just Michael and the kids. He'd spend hours with them, talking, playing, singing. Sometimes he'd bring gifts. Sometimes he'd just sit and hold a child's hand. One doctor said Michael would often visit terminally ill children, kids who weren't going to survive, kids who were scared and in pain. Michael would sit with them, comfort them, make them laugh. He'd stay as long as the child wanted him there, sometimes hours. And when he left, he'd often leave instructions with the hospital. Send me the bill for this child's treatment. I'll take care of it. No publicity, no announcement, just Michael Jackson quietly paying for a dying child's final days to be as comfortable as possible. How many children did Michael help this way? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. We'll never know the exact number because Michael never wanted anyone to count. He just wanted to help. Here's something you might not know. Michael Jackson holds a Guinness World Record for charity. In 2000, he was recognized for supporting 39 different charities, more than any other entertainer at that time. 39 charities. That's the ones we knew about. The actual number? Probably closer to 100. Let's talk about some of them. Michael funded the T.J. Martell Foundation, which researches cures for leukemia, cancer, and AIDS. He supported the United Negro College Fund, helping African American students afford education. He donated to the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation. Elizabeth was one of his closest friends, and supporting her cause was personal for him. He funded the Dream Street Kids, an organization that grants wishes to terminally ill children. He supported the Make-A-Wish Foundation. In fact, Michael granted more Make-A-Wish requests than any other celebrity in the organization's history. Think about that. More than any other celebrity ever. Hundreds of children wished to meet Michael Jackson, and he said yes to every single one. He'd invite them to his home, Neverland Ranch. Let them ride the rides, play in the arcade, meet the animals. He'd spend time with them, really spend time with them. Not a quick photo and goodbye. Hours. Some of these children were dying. Meeting Michael was the last happy memory they'd have, and Michael gave them that. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. But even beyond the organizations everyone knew about, Michael was funding smaller charities, local charities, Charities that had no public profile but were doing important work. A children's home in Philadelphia, an orphanage in Brazil, a school for deaf children in Japan. Michael would hear about an organization doing good work, and he'd just send them money. Sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes more. No strings attached, no publicity requirements. Just keep doing what you're doing. After Michael died in 2009, dozens of small charities came forward with stories of anonymous donations they'd received over the years. Only after his death did they realize the donations had come from Michael. A homeless shelter in Los Angeles, a food bank in Detroit, a medical clinic in Africa, all funded by Michael Jackson, all kept secret until he was gone. One charity director said, "We thought we had an anonymous angel watching over us. Turns out it was Michael Jackson." That's who Michael really was. Not the tabloid stories, not the controversies, not the scandals. The real Michael Jackson was a man who gave $500 million to help others and never wanted credit for it. Let's talk about Neverland Ranch. The media portrayed it as Michael's playground, his escape from reality, his own private theme park. And sure, it was all of those things, but it was also something else. A place where Michael brought sick and underprivileged children to experience joy. This is something that got lost in all the controversy, buried under the accusations and the sensationalism. But the truth is that Michael opened Neverland to children's groups on a regular basis. Kids from hospitals, kids from orphanages, kids from inner-city programs, kids who'd never been to an amusement park or seen a zoo. Michael would invite entire groups, sometimes hundreds of children at a time, to spend the day at Neverland. For free. Everything free. They could ride the roller coaster, the Ferris wheel, the carousel. They could see the animals, llamas, giraffes, elephants. They could eat all the candy and popcorn they wanted. And Michael would often be there, joining them. Not as a celebrity, just as a guy who wanted to make sure they had fun. Some of these children were terminally ill. Some came from abusive homes. Some were disabled. For one day, they gotta forget their pain, forget their problems. Just be kids. Michael spent millions maintaining Neverland. And while he lived there and enjoyed it, a huge part of why he created it was to share it with children who needed happiness. After the 2005 trial, when Michael was acquitted of all charges, he never lived at Neverland again. The place held too many painful memories. But even after he left, even after the ranch was essentially abandoned, Michael continued funding children's charities. Because Neverland was never the point. Helping children was the point. The ranch was just one way he did it. Here's a story that didn't get much media attention. In 1995, Michael invited the entire class of a Los Angeles elementary school to Neverland. Why? Because the school was in a rough neighborhood. The kids came from poor families. Most of them had never been outside the city. Michael heard about the school and just invited them. They spent the day at Neverland. Michael met with every single child, took photos, signed autographs, made sure they felt special. One of those children, now an adult, said in an interview, "Michael Jackson gave me the best day of my childhood. I was a poor kid who thought I'd never matter to anyone, and the most famous man in the world spent time with me. Made me feel important." That's what Michael did, thousands of times, for thousands of children. And most of it, nobody ever heard about. Even in Michael's final years, when he was struggling financially, when his career was in limbo, when the media was tearing him apart, he was still giving. In 2008, Michael was essentially broke. Years of legal battles, mismanagement, and expensive lifestyle had drained his fortune. He was living in a rented house. He owed millions in debts. He was planning a comeback tour just to get back on his feet financially. And he was still donating to charity. Let that sink in. Michael Jackson, who was struggling to pay his own bills, was still finding ways to help others. In 2008, he anonymously paid for a child's heart surgery in London. The family had been trying to raise money. The surgery cost over $100,000. Michael heard about it and just paid for it. He couldn't afford it. His financial advisors probably told him not to do it. But Michael did it anyway. Because to him, charity wasn't about having extra money, it was about doing what was right. Even when it hurt him financially, even when it made his own situation worse. Michael Jackson gave when he had billions, and he gave when he had nothing. That's not publicity. That's not image management. That's character. In the months before his death, Michael was preparing for his This Is It concert series in London. 50 shows, a massive comeback, a chance to restore his legacy and his finances. During rehearsals, Michael told his team he wanted to donate a portion of the proceeds to children's charities. His financial advisors pushed back. Michael was in debt. He needed every dollar from those concerts to get back on his feet. Michael didn't care. He insisted that a percentage of ticket sales go to charity, because even at his lowest point, even when he desperately needed money, Michael's first instinct was to give. That's who he was. After Michael died on the 25th of June, 2009, something remarkable happened. Dozens of charities organizations Michael had funded anonymously for years came forward to share their stories. A children's hospital in Texas that Michael had supported for over a decade. An orphanage in Romania that Michael had funded since the 1992. A school for blind children in Mexico that Michael had built and maintained. Story after story after story, the world finally learned the truth. Michael Jackson hadn't just been the king of pop. He'd been one of the most generous humanitarians of his generation. And he'd done it all in secret. So why did Michael keep it secret? Some people have theorized that Michael was trying to balance out negative media coverage with positive actions. That maybe he thought if he did enough good in the world, karma would protect him. But people who knew Michael well say it was simpler than that. He gave because he genuinely cared. Because he remembered what it was like to be a child with nothing. Because he believed every child deserved happiness, safety, and opportunity. And he didn't talk about it because, in his mind, charity wasn't supposed to be about getting credit. It was supposed to be about helping people. David Guest, Michael's friend, once said, "Michael told me that giving should be done in private, that God sees what you do in secret, and that's what matters." That was Michael's philosophy. Give quietly, give generously, give without expecting anything in return. After Michael's death, several charities he'd funded anonymously struggled financially. The anonymous donations stopped, and suddenly, these organizations realized they'd been dependent on Michael's generosity. Some had to scale back programs. Some had to turn away children they would have helped. Michael's death didn't just take away a performer. It took away a benefactor who'd been quietly keeping dozens of organizations alive. Today, there are adults who are alive because Michael paid for their childhood medical treatments. There are professionals who succeeded because Michael funded their education. There are people all over the world whose lives were changed by Michael Jackson's generosity. And most of them never knew it was him. That's the real Michael Jackson story. Not the tabloids, not the scandals, not the controversies. The real story is a man who gave everything he had to help others, asked for nothing in return, and never wanted credit. A man who understood that true generosity happens in silence. Michael Jackson gave away $500 million during his lifetime. He supported 39 documented charities and probably twice that many in secret. He granted more Make-A-Wish requests than any other celebrity in history. He visited sick children in hospitals, not for publicity, but because he cared. He funded medical treatments, built schools, fed the hungry, and changed countless lives. And he did most of it anonymously, because Michael Jackson didn't want to be known as a philanthropist. He just wanted to help. If this story changed how you see Michael Jackson, subscribe to King of POP and hit that notification bell. We've got more untold stories about the real Michael Jackson coming your way. And let us know in the comments, did you know about Michael's secret philanthropy? What surprised you most? Stay tuned for more content. Long live the King of Pop.